this video here is Arnold Schwarzenegger talks to Alexander Vindman, who is apparently a retired United States Army Lieutenant Colonel and former Director of European Affairs for the United States National Security Council, and he's basically having a chat with him. And the thing of note here in this 55-minute video, which is in the reading list on our website if you want to find it, is him talking about COVID. So if we watch this first clip, you'll see what I mean.
But I think people should know there is a virus here. It kills people. And the only way we prevent it is to get vaccinated, to wear masks, to do social distancing, washing your hands all the time, and not just to think about, well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom. Because with freedom comes obligations and kind of responsibilities. We cannot just say, I have the right to do X, Y, and Z. When you affect other people, that is when it gets serious. It's like no different than a traffic light. We put a traffic light at an intersection so someone doesn't kill someone else by accident. So this is why we have a traffic light. You cannot say, no one is going to tell me that I'm going to stop here, that I have to stop at this traffic light here. I'm going to go right through it. Yeah, then you kill someone else, and then it is your doing. So this is the same thing with the virus. You cannot go and not put a mask on, because when you breathe, you can infect someone else, and you can infect someone that then gets sick and may die. So this is why I think.
So what do you make of that? Yeah.
Oh, God. I mean, just screw your freedoms is going to be the line, isn't it?
Yeah.
Eternal German comes out of him.
I can't believe that he said that after talking about freedom in America when he was being elected to the governor of California, how much he loved America. And then he's
governor of California. So.
Yeah, I know, of course. But at least he was a Republican, I suppose. That's a small redeeming feature, but not with opinions like that.
I don't really
Screw
care
your
about
freedom.
Like, Team Red, Team Blue isn't that important when the guy on Team Red just looks like Team Blue.
No.
Like, we've got the same ideology than the party affiliation.
That's why I said it with a certain amount of contempt, just like, well,
he
wasn't completely awful, but it's not really a redeeming thing. So yeah, obviously he says social distancing, washing your hands works, which, I mean, is true. However, he does come out with some questionable stuff.
But like, no one's opposing the idea that you should wash your hands. There's no big lobby of like, nah, screw you, I'm never gonna wash my hands. Like that's not happening.
You see someone with black hands, like, yeah, I've never washed these hands and I'm proud.
Make me Arnold. Like, that's not happening. There is no movement for I ban hand washing. Like there is a movement for ban the government forcing you to wear masks or forcing you to get jabbed, because that's not right. That's inhumane. It is the wrong thing to do to give the government that kind of power. They can just say, yeah, we'll just inject you with whatever we want, nothing you can do about it. And if you don't, we're going to ruin your life.
Exactly. And I think that's a perfectly valid thing. And he seems to really not understand that for someone who seems to like America. And he does say that with freedom comes obligations, which is true. Of course, these obligations shouldn't be enforced by the state. They should be social obligations though, right? So you have things like you respect other people's space. You don't go up to them and kind of freak them out. Obviously, it's not illegal to kind of stand right next to you. And if I was like getting right up in your face, I mean, I'm not really doing anything, but it's just weird. And you wouldn't do it, right? Obviously. Yeah. And being loud at night when people are trying to sleep, like, I'm sure it's illegal, and I'm personally a little bit bitter about this.
You've been sleeping well, huh?
No, not really. But yeah, it's an obligation that's something that you've got to live up to. It's not necessarily legally enforced, but you have responsibility. Freedom doesn't mean just doing exactly what you want. That's a fair point. However, he's not interpreting it in the right way. Those obligations shouldn't be enforced by the state because society enforces them in a better way, I think. And, of course, Arnold as well, talking about obligations and freedom, the guy who, slept with a maid in his wife's bed, he's used his freedom in a way which is irresponsible.
Did you see Michael Malice's tweet about this? Because you saw his example there. He was like, well, there's a red light, just drive through because my freedom. He's like, yeah, Arnold. And if there's a maid in your hotel room, just have sex with her and not tell your wife because my freedom.
It's a fair point.
It's just like, there's your obligations, Arnold. Don't have sex with the maid.
And it seems a little bit rich coming from him talking about obligations and freedom when he's basically betrayed someone who was obviously very close to him, his wife.
Yeah.
Like,
but also, every time a German starts talking about freedoms being bad.
Yeah. The apple hasn't fallen far from the tree, but I will get onto that in a second. Don't worry. I'm not going to let him off the hook quite yet.
For being German.
He's Austrian.
Don't give me any of that Austrian stuff. No, just proto-Germans.
So yeah, something that I saw commented on the original video, which is a quote that I was reminded of and like quite a lot, is a quote from Benjamin Franklin. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Those are the values of America, not screw your freedom. This is what he should be saying.
Benjamin Franklin, screw your freedom. That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah. Like, what an insult to the people of America. He pretends to actually care about them to get into elected office, and then he's just like, you know what? One of your founding principles, you know what? It's not important. You've got to listen to the government, which is apparently him importing some Austrian values. But I won't go into that quite yet. So also the analogy he uses...
I should make a correction. They're not proto-Germans. They're mountain Germans. The Austrians. Well, just like the Netherlands, it's full of swamp Germans.
It's just...
You never heard this before?
I have, but it's just silly. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it does.
Just add some kind of prefix to a word.
Swiss Germans.
Well, because we are descended from Saxons, we're island Germans now, are we?
Nah, we're too mixed to be Germans.
Okay. I'm glad we're safe of that anyway.
The German virus.
But anyway, this traffic light analogy he uses where you don't drive through the traffic light, that doesn't make sense because you're not forced to drive on the road. You could use public transport. You're technically not driving there. You could choose not to travel at all. Whereas with the vaccines and stuff going towards it being mandated, you're not really given a choice. You're having things taken away from you. You can't go to large events like in the UK. Music festivals are going to be off limits to people who aren't vaccinated. Yeah, you could be even worse and be French, just in general. Sorry.
But you'd have the police coming around and checking your papers, please.
You're having a coffee outdoors, and then the police will come over to you, and they'll be asking for your vaccine papers. And if you don't have them, I don't know what exactly they do, but it's either a fine or, I don't know, prison. Prison
if you don't pay it.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Because that's the thing as well. Like I think it was iDubbbz made a video joking about the people who are worried about coercion from the government on this stuff. And in America, it's at the stage of free hamburgers, free money, and whatnot. The people talking are not talking about stopping there.
Yeah, exactly.
They're happy to keep going.
That's what I kind of gathered from Arnold there, in that it seemed like he was alluding to, you know, these things have to be mandated. You've got to get people to do this.
I mean, Joe Biden's looking at that right now, I believe. I think he's having in talks with the executive about doing a federal mask mandate, as in trying to enforce it across all the states, and everyone has told him that's unconstitutional. We're not doing that.
And the biggest thing, which we also touched on yesterday, that Fauci mentioned as well, is that getting vaccinated doesn't really reduce your chance of passing on COVID. It might do a little bit. I've seen studies that have suggested it does it a lot, but it's very variable at the minute. There's no exact definition of, you know, this is how much it prevents it. It's only, at the very least, a small amount, but you can still pass it on, you can still get it. The main effect of the vaccines is that it reduces the severity of the symptoms, right? So we can look at a study here from Israel, which I've deliberately gone to CNBC as well, just to make sure, you know, even
this is not the left-wing, right wing trying to do this.
They're saying, look, the vaccine's about 39% effective in Israel, the most vaccinated country in the world. And, you know, the main thing it prevents is severe illness. And they say that the main benefit is that about 88% of effectiveness against hospitalization and 91% effectiveness against severe illness. But as we've seen with the kind of ongoing debate at the minute, for young people who have no chance of serious illness or hospitalization, is this really worth it? And as we looked at yesterday, of course, there isn't actually any evidence for this yet.
Like if your risk of death is 0.02%, getting rid of 91% of that, it's not that important.
It seems very disproportionate to then be like, you can do these things, but not these things, based on something that is not lethal to that element of the population.
It doesn't to say it's bad either. Obviously, it's good for people of high risk.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not saying you shouldn't get the vaccine if you're vulnerable. Obviously, that's a good thing to do. But if you're young or healthy, you know, it's your decision to make. But it's not the same as the people who are vulnerable.
Unless the German gets his way.
Well, old habits die hard, don't they? So I want to move on to another thing about the kind of ongoing COVID debates from Arnold, and I'm just going to read the whole thing here. He says, I said this to someone in the comments, but I think a lot of you need to hear this. I always say you should know your strengths and listen to experts. If you want to learn about building biceps, listen to me, because I spent my life studying how to get the perfect peak, and I've been called the greatest bodybuilder of all time. We all have different specialities. I like how he kind of sets up the best rebuttal against him as well. He's saying you should listen to the experts. Now here's me talking about virology.
Here's why you shouldn't listen to me now.
So he says, Dr. Fauci and all of the virologists and epidemiologists and doctors have studied diseases and vaccines for their entire lives, so I listen to them and I urge you to do the same. None of us are going to learn more than them by watching a few hours of videos. It's simple. If your house is on fire, you don't go on YouTube. You call the damn fire department. If you have a heart attack, you don't check your Facebook group, you call an ambulance. If 9 doctors tell you you have cancer and need to treat it or die, and 1 doctor says the cancer will disappear, you should always side with the 9. In this case, virtually all of the real experts around the world are telling you the vaccine is safe, and some people on Facebook say it isn't. In general, I think the circle of people you trust gets smaller and smaller, and you find yourself more and more isolated. It should be a warning sign that you're going down a rabbit hole of misinformation. Some people say it is weak to listen to experts. That's bogus. It takes strength to admit that you don't know everything. Weakness is thinking you don't need expert advice and only listen to sources that confirm what you want to believe. So obviously...
He didn't address his point at all. The point was about freedom. Should people have the right to say, no, thank you?
This isn't like a subsequent post rationalising the video. The video only just went up, but this is something else that he's commenting on. But there's a lot to dissect here that I think is interesting. So, of course, Dr. Fauci, we know, as we touched on yesterday, his advice has changed. He's said, you don't have to wear masks and masks should be mandated. He's kind of flipped between the two. His position always changes. And of course, we now know... Here's a good article from The Telegraph that says, cloth face masks are comfort blankets that do not curb COVID spread, scientist warns. And this is I think he's a physicist because he's talking about the actual particle.
Particulates, yeah.
Yeah. So
I
getting
remember
through
at
the
the time,
material.
I went to the WHO, they had a study on particulates on different face mask coverings, and their data was that if you wore an N95 mask, that worked perfectly. That was what you wanted to wear. I think it was like 99%, 95%. Didn't get through for COVID particulates. If you use the dentist looking one that most people have, it was 30% block, so 70% still got through. And if you use those biker things people sometimes wear, that
like
increased
a bandana.
that increased the number of particulates to 103%. Because
How does that work?
the larger ones went through and then got cut up into smaller ones, apparently.
Okay.
So just putting a piece of cloth there doesn't work. According to the WHO, you've got to wear something useful.
It's more or less what this Dr. Colin Axon suggests, that some cloth masks have gaps which are invisible to the naked eye, but are 5,000 times the size of a viral COVID particle. So he uses the analogy of, the small sizes are not easily understood, but an imperfect analogy would be to imagine marbles fired at builders' scaffolding. Some might hit a pole and rebound, but obviously most will fly through. So he's saying that they're not particularly useful. Sure, they might do something.
There is an argument in counter, which is that the reason you want that anyway is because you're trying to lower the percentage of dose you get. So if you have a lower amount of particulates being injected to you through coughing or whatever, and therefore if it stops 30%, then it still has a role to play. That's the counter argument.
I'm not saying that they're completely useless, but I think...
the bandana one apparently was.
Yeah,
so...
well... So even the blue surgical mask, apparently a COVID viral particle is around 100 nanometers, and the material gaps in these blue masks are 1,000 times that size. So, it's imperfect, but I imagine if you had, holes that were absolutely tiny that actually stopped them, you probably just wouldn't be able to breathe.
Well, no, that's the difference between N95 and the dentist-looking one. The N95 one stopped them all, apparently, and almost all of them. And the dentist one stopped 30%.
So I don't really understand why, if we had, masks in shops and stuff like that, where it was legally enforced, why was it not the ones that are the most effective? Is that because of, I imagine it's material shortages?
By the sounds of it. Because I remember where the price of them skyrocketed in the early stages as well, because I was on Amazon looking at them. And so there's that. That's probably why.
Yeah. So, I mean, fair enough.
I do want to mention about Arnold Schwarzenegger's post, though, going back for a second. You know how he said if someone's having a heart attack, you wouldn't go on a Facebook group? There is like a funny meme of people, like someone had a heart attack, so they look up how to do CPR on YouTube, and like YouTube runs a 30-second advert. It's like, thanks YouTube.
I think everyone should know CPR. That's going to be my one takeaway from this is if you want to actually do something useful, learn CPR because it will always come in handy. But never mind, that's completely irrelevant to what we're talking about.
Tangent, let's go back.
So back to the actual Arnold post again. He says, just to repeat the quote, in general, I think if the circle of people you trust gets smaller and smaller, you find yourself more and more isolated, it should be a warning sign you're going through a rabbit hole of misinformation. So this is where I wanted to look at Arnold's father, because this ties in quite nicely. That face.
Did he trust the experts?
Well, so here is an article from the LA Times which says Austrian archives reveal Nazi military role of actor's father. I like how they deliberately didn't mention which actor this was.
Which German actor
They do mention
be?
down below. So, supposedly his father voluntarily joined the Nazi Party in 1938 and joined the Brown Shirts in 1939, which was after Kristallnacht, so he must have known what it was about.
Oh, everyone knew.
What was that, sorry?
No one didn't know what the Nazi Party was about.
Well, yeah. I think it's difficult to be naive of that. So he was also a master sergeant in the military police who both suppressed citizen dissent and fought on the front lines. Of course, his father's name was Gustav, being Austrian, and reportedly fought in the thick of some battles as he was reported as being in infirmaries with battle injuries. So he was pretty much committed to this, right?
So he wasn't just a conscript either. Like, he
No,
joined the party.
He joined voluntarily,
He joined the
yeah.
Brown Shirts.
So, of course, at the time, in Germany and Austria, the majority were supportive of the Nazi Party. So, in this scenario, what is the right thing to do, Arnold? Is it to trust the majority of people? Is it
Trust the experts.
you trust the experts, the people in authority?
Though there is something to be said. Do you know about the referendum in Austria for the Anschluss? They did a referendum afterwards, after the army had come in, and it's you should look up the ballot if you're at home. Just Austrian referendum ballot, and you'll get it's a big circle in the middle. It says ja. There's a tiny circle over here that says 9. So do you want to join with Germany? So it's like
That's ridiculous.
yes, or I want to be shot.
But yeah, the point I'm trying to make here is that, minorities throughout history have been right about things. And I know that sounds uncharacteristic of, someone who's been recently very critical of the LGBT stuff. Obviously, not all minorities are right inherently, but the people who were fighting against the Nazis within Germany, you can't say that they're wrong just because they're a minority. They didn't respect the authority. People in authority can be wrong, and just because you live in the modern day and you think everything's rosy and great doesn't mean that human beings are any different. It doesn't mean you need to trust what people say at face value. You should always be skeptical and come to your own opinion because people don't always have your interests at heart. And
Well, John makes a great point there with saying that science is not a democracy.
No, it's not, and I know full well about that.
Yeah, like anyone with a science background would not fall for the argument of like, well, most people agree. And it's like, I don't care.
Well, there's of course, using the science analogy, there are lots of opinions only, 20, 30 years ago where they were commonplace, both amongst the population and amongst the majority of scientists that are now completely defunct but still carry on in the popular consciousness and stuff like that. But nevertheless, I think my opinion of Arnold has gone down significantly after him saying that. And I think if you're American in particular, the disrespect he showed for your country's values should be
For any liberal.
infuriating. Yeah, exactly.
If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.